you're listening to 91.8 Hayes FM, local radio where you live. And thankfully, my apologies for the earlier chatter in the background, but I was actually speaking with Lavender Lace, our guest today, and it was unfortunate that we kind of managed to get hold of her at a hotel just as we were coming on air. There was no way of actually containing the conversation. So I think that the conversation sounded odd on her side, and it certainly must have sounded odd to you, the listener, on this side. But anyway, regardless of all that, Lavender is with us. And Lavender, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, nice and loud and clear. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful today.
Wonderful. Good. Great. Thank you so much, Lavender, for joining us today. Lavender, we spoke with you a couple of weeks ago, or perhaps about a month, just over a month or so ago, because you'd written, or you'd actually just had your book published, your new book, The Pain Behind My Smile. And at that stage, I hadn't actually read the book yet and was sort of really going by some quite brief skimming of the book. But now, of course, since I've been on my holiday, I've actually read the book and also left it with my sister to read and my mother to read. So it's getting quite a bit of use. But I'm so thankful that I was able to do that, because now we can perhaps have a more constructive conversation about the book itself and what it's helped you to do in terms of your own life. But firstly, how are you enjoying London?
I am really enjoying London. It's one of my better vacations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Even though we're having great weather.
Yes.
And not.
Well, the weather is comparative to the weather I left behind.
Yes, you reside in New York, do you?
Yes, I do.
Well, yes, and their weather's just as bad, not worse. Okay, well, anyway, welcome to our fair city. It's actually lovely to speak with you and have you speak with us here at Black Connections. And, I mean, for those of you possibly who didn't hear the interview that we did with Lavender a couple of months ago, I've actually uploaded it on Mixcloud. But Lavender, just give us a brief summary of what your book is about.
Well, my book is really about my life and some of the challenges I faced and how I dealt with those challenges and eventually overcame them. Right.
So it's about a life of challenge and a life of triumph to some extent in terms of overcoming some of those issues. And I think one of the things that I found very sort of startling and quite powerful in your book is how reliant you were upon your faith to bring you through a lot of the challenges that you faced.
Yes, that is one of my sustaining beacons. I think had it not been for my faith, I would not be having this conversation with you. Sure.
In the book you mention, sadly, that you'd had thoughts of suicide. You had, thoughts of how on earth you're going to get yourself out of some of the situations that you found yourself in. But not without giving too much away, because of course we want people to purchase the book and read it. Give us an example of something that you found quite challenging that you talk about in the book. I mean, I think one of the things I found really interesting was your relationship with your parents, who were not together, but you had a relationship with your mother and a relationship with your father, which was, I suppose, equally challenging at times. If you were going to share something of how you conveyed that in the book, which would you choose, or what would you choose to share with the listeners?
I would certainly want my listeners, especially those who are parents and those who are going to be parents, to be very mindful of the trust that you have of the children that are entrusted to your care, because you never know how life will turn out. Because as it turned out, I had to be the caretaker for both my mother and my father. And considering the relationship that we had, or lack thereof, I think it was ironic that the mantle fell to me and how I responded to that challenge.
I mean, I must say that when in reading the book, I found myself constantly shaking my head because of the irony of it all. And I think certainly, you talk about your earlier life where you were left in the care of an older sister, and obviously at times you were really unhappy about that and really unhappy in that situation, but you couldn't convey that to your mother particularly. Your father lived elsewhere, but you couldn't convey that to your mother. But yet, you and her, it seems, struggled through a relationship, which I think to some extent, from what I could read, did kind of come good towards the end. Would you say, or?
Yes, in the end, it came full circle because I believed what I was striving for all of my life is the acceptance and the love of my mother. Okay. All sadly, I felt that at the end of her days. Mm. I think that's the closest we had ever been. My being her caretaker and her realizing that I was truly her rock. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I always say to myself, it's why is it that it takes that period of people's lives sometimes that they kind of begin to see the light. That always perplexes me, really, that it's at those, why is it that people don't make much better use of life when life is there, basically?
I really feel that people should embrace life. I think what happened to me with my parents, and this is my only explanation, is that I became a casualty of whatever transpired in their relationship.
Yes, indeed. And so many adults use their children in that way, perhaps not intentionally, but as a consequence, the children suffer under those circumstances because of the issues they had in their own relationships.
I truly believe so, because for the first 7 or 8 years of my life, there was a very closeness between my mother and I. I really felt loved by her. Mm-hmm. And all of that changed when her and my father were no longer friendly. They never lived together, but they had a closer relationship, and whatever happened, it changed the whole dynamics of my life.
Wow. And in terms of your father, who has also sadly passed, would you sort of summarize that it's a similar kind of trajectory that took place, in that it was towards the end of his own life that he began to value you? That's something else that came through in the book as well.
Yes, because my father, he had only 2 children, a brother and myself. The brother predeceased him, so then I was all that he had left. Right. And in spite of the fact that he had rejected me, in his latter days, it was only I who was there for him.
And I mean, even in terms of how you describe him in the book, although you kind of you sort of tried to portray quite an understanding approach, you were also quite frank about how you felt about him in the earlier period. Was that difficult for you to write about, or did it feel quite cleansing to do that?
It was part of the healing process, but I also wanted to be honest. I had always loved, and I guess I always will, love my parents. However, I didn't like them much at times because of what they did to me. Sure. For some people it'd be difficult to understand how you could love people but not necessarily like them.
Oh, I think a lot of us can understand that. Would you agree, Simon?
Oh yes, definitely.
Definitely. And I think probably as you become older and more mature and more, with more understanding, I think you can kind of work that out. I mean, there are a lot of us who still find it difficult to work it out, but I can entirely understand what you were saying in your book. let's take a quick break now, Lavender, and when we come back, we'll chat a bit more about, what's happened since you've written the book. And, if you could stay on the line, we'd be more than grateful.
Okay, I'll be right here.
8 Hayes FM, Black Connections. My name is Sylvia. His name is Simon. For once, he's being very quiet. I'm not quite sure why. I don't know. Perhaps the cat's got his tongue.
No, I'm letting you run the show. You see, giving you, as they say, 2 hours of
free reign.
Thank
you so much. Thank you so much. Before the break, we were chatting with Lavender Lace about her new book, The Pain Behind My Smile, and Lavender was sort of sharing with us something of her relationships with her parents and the challenges they're in, and how she has found her book, or writing her book, something of a healing process. Lavender, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we were talking before the break about, the book being a kind of a healing process as opposed to it being something that you really had to kind of trudge through and really have difficulties in writing. But even in doing so, even as part of the healing process, I also note from the book that you underwent therapy yourself to kind of come to terms with some of the issues that you had to contend with. Did that also help you?
Yes, it did. Because some of my issues were so deep-seated, I had to get professional help.
Okay, and do you think that sort of contributes to your understanding, your kind of fairly, what I would consider wise kind of understanding of what your childhood, what you went through in childhood?
Most definitely. Because, when you're on the outside looking in, you don't quite grasp the situation as someone who has had the experience. And therefore the therapy really did help, because it helped me to have a better perspective on why some things happened.
Sure. So presumably you would have got a perspective from your father's point of view, your mother's point of view, and your own point of view.
Most definitely. Because a lot of those practices and situations are handed down for one reason or another. If we really look back, we'll see why certain behaviors occur.
I mean, it's good. It's good. I think that certainly for us in the black community who are rather resistant to things like therapy, and we have a kind of an aversion to talking about our issues, about our difficulties. I think it's changing slightly more now, but I know certainly within our community generally, it's not something that we tend to go for, and we do see it quite often as a sign of weakness. If we talk about the problems that we have, or if we share them, or if we try to seek resolution professionally. I presume that you are not of that ilk.
No, I'm not, because one of the things I think that people in the black community are afraid of, they're afraid of being judged.
Sure.
And my personal belief, and that's how I look at my life now, where I am, is that no one has the right to judge you unless they've walked in your shoes.
Of course. Absolutely. So that's refreshing, and I suppose your testimony to the good that sharing problems can have. I mean, I also understand that there are people who can be a bit destructive, but at the same time, there is a lot of use in sharing some of the issues, particularly if it can help yourself and help other people. I mean, have you found that the response you've had to writing such an honest book? Have you found that the response has been relatively positive, or have you had criticisms about being so open about your life?
I was very, very surprised, because it was with some trepidation that I went ahead with the book.
I can imagine, yeah.
And I was really taken aback at the responses. there is not a person that I have spoken with. I don't know if they say it behind my back, but I have not gotten a positive feedback from.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, they're wanting to know when is the next book coming out.
Good gracious. Yeah, no pressure then. I mean, I think...
And my next book will be out sometime between the spring and the summer of next year.
Okay, so you already started work. Oh, gosh, okay. But I mean, I think in a way, what the message you're also giving is that, there are a lot of people who will suffer in silence. They will suffer in silence about things that have happened in their past, and perhaps even go to the grave with these things heavily burdened on their hearts. And I think you're an example of someone who is basically saying that is not necessary. It really is not necessary. You can get help, you can get counsel, you can get good counsel. And you can get some support
because for me, it's about embracing life.
Absolutely.
And if you're burdened and your soul is heavy, you cannot experience life the way life was meant to live.
That's right.
So for me, it has been so healing and so free. I am not governed by what people think or say, because at the end of the day, it was my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it has helped others to really come forward and to know. I remember speaking at an event, and a woman was there. She was 75 years old, and she just broke down because she said she had carried this burden for her entire life, and it was very healing for her to understand that she is not the only one that had faced these situations in her life.
Wow. Excellent. Okay, Lavender. Unfortunately, time is against us as per usual. But could you share with us where we can get the book from, and if there are any? Well, I was going to say if there are any events that you're involved in, but they'd be in America, wouldn't they? But if people do want to get hold of the book, and if people do want to find out more about you, how can they do that?
Well, they can visit my website, www.lavenderlace.info, and the book is also available in paperback, Kindle, and ebook form at Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
Wonderful. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for taking some time out of your holiday to spend it with us. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you again. Hopefully when you have written and published the second book, we can chat with you again.
I look forward to that. It was lovely chatting with you, and I hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much. If you stay on the line, Lavender will be with you in 2. Okay, Lavender Lace there talking about her new book, The Pain Behind My Smile. Please do check it out. It's a compelling read. It's not a very long book, but it certainly has a lot of weight in it. So please do check it out. And as she says, it's available on Amazon, and it's also available at Barnes & Noble's online. We have Barnes & Noble's here, I think. We do.
Yes, I think we do. We do.
So make sure you check that out. Let's go to the local news now with Alex Loveridge, and, of course, What's On with Andrew Stevens. Keep it locked. This is 91.8 Hayes FM.
91.8 Hayes FM.